Hey guys! Today we'll be recapping the manhwa. The promise isn't mine. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, as it really helps our channel grow. Thanks. The scene unfolded with a view of a war. A young and handsome knight stands there holding his sword. Some soldiers standing in front of him die. They attacked him while shouting, "You monster!" But their move goes useless as the knight stands without any damage. They get shocked seeing him. Meanwhile, he attacked them and hit them all in no time. Meanwhile, an aura comes from his wound. He faltered and said, "Not now." His hand starts to transform and he thinks, seeing his hand, "If I become a dragon right now." In meantime, his soldier comes shouting, "Highness! Your Highness!" He gets interrupted by him. The soldier comes and asked him, "Are you alright, Your Highness?" He said to him, "Please hold yourself together. You mustn't lose control of yourself here." The man holds his hand and then, seeing it clenched his hand, he thinks he's right. Just 10 more days and I'll finally be able to die while human. However, if fate might be so kind as to allow it, it is my wish to see you one last time, before I die. Changing scenes, we saw a beautiful grand palace. A girl with golden hair standing outside raised her hand in air and said, "It's snowing." She thinks Leyla's never been away for this long before. What could be causing her to be so late? She thinks, and it's not just Leyla, I've barely seen any of the bishops today as well. We don't have that many days left together anymore. Where have you gone, Leyla? She recalls a moment when she was standing with her twin sister in forest surrounded by some priests. A priest said to her twin sister, "You may begin now, Leyla." She grabs her hand and said, "Leyla." Her sister said, "It's okay." Then her sister starts magic. A glowing aura comes from her hand. With her aura, a plant starts to grow. Then it becomes a grown tree in no time, and the priest said, "Ah, what incredible power!" She faltered and the priest said, "Truly a testament to her being the Holy Maiden." She said, "If she exerts herself any further." Meanwhile, the priest grabs her. He said to her, "What are you waiting for, Elena?" Other priest said, "It's your turn to show us your powers now." Elena thinks, "I can do it. I know I can." Standing there, she thinks, "This time for sure." She shouts, "Please," and starts showing her powers. But nothing happened and everyone stands there silently. While a priest said, "Being twins, you two were born, each bearing half of the holy markings. So what could possibly account for your lack of power?" Coming back to her sense, she clenched her hand. She closed her eyes and thinks, "Steward of the sacred tree of life, the Landfair Empire." According to legend, to ensure the protection of the tree of life, the Mighty One entrusted this land to 2 guardians. The black-scaled dragon of peerless strength, and the Holy Maiden, she who brings peace through healing. With the passage of time, however, the dragon found himself in love with the Holy Maiden. And soon he took the shape of man to become Landfair's emperor and demanded the people live in worship of the maiden. Yeah, the duty given to the dragon was protecting the tree of life. Angered by the dragon's neglect of his duty, the Mighty One spoke thus: "Of those who inherit your blood I shall take as my share the mightiest and wisest sons." Thereafter in Landfair, many were born of the dragon's lineage, who possessed mighty strength far exceeding that of ordinary man. But of those, not one avoided an early demise. However, when the Holy Maiden, who had fallen for a descendant of the dragon, cried and begged for the Mighty One's forgiveness, he in his mercy answered her prayer. Thus the birth and marriage of the Holy Maiden and the dragon's descendant ushered in a new era of glory for the empire. Seeing her wrist, she thinks, "But if the legend really is true, why? Why we born twins? And why? Do I lack the power to protect anyone?" It's already been 10 years since Leyla's betrothal to the crown prince. Now, less than 10 days remain until their marriage. And when Leyla is finally gone, I will be trapped in this empire alone, forced to live the rest of my life in solitude. Meanwhile, someone comes holding a light. A priest comes and said to her, "Ah, there you are, Elena." he said to her. I am told that you've been looking for Leyla all day. Elena replied, yes, but I've yet to find her. She asked him, has something happened to Leyla, perhaps? He said, it appears the decision that the Archbishop have made in the past was the right one. He steps closer to her saying, rejoice, for the Mighty One has revealed your calling. He holds her shoulder and said, Leyla has disappeared without a trace. You must, therefore, marry the crown prince in her stead. Hearing this, she gets shocked. They went down in the palace, and after many stairs going down, Elena thinks, just how far down are we going? Where could these stairs possibly lead? After reaching down, she tries to figure out where she was. Seeing the place she thinks is this: the sacred chamber where the bishops hold their meetings. The priest said to Grand Priest, I have brought Elena, your grace. The Grand Priest said, so she really has run off while leaving her sister behind. How cruel, he said, but perhaps this is a cause for celebration. Hearing this, Elena gets confused. He grabs her saying, for you finally now have a purpose. He pushes her away saying, I'm sure you've already been informed. He said to Elena, we shall depart for the palace together once a carriage is sent here in 10 days. Elena gets shocked when he said, do not forget that you must assume the identity of Holy Maiden Leyla when you are there. Elena said to him, but you know that I don't possess the powers of the Holy Maiden, your grace. He replied, it doesn't matter. I doubt the Emperor has any interest in planting greenery. He said, you see, most think of the marriage between the descendants of the dragon and Holy Maiden merely as custom. However, the true purpose of such a marriage is to hide a certain uncomfortable truth about this land. Yes, the truth that he who continues to use the dragon's powers eventually becomes a dragon. Hearing this, all Elena thinks, I thought all that about the dragon's powers was a fairy tale. But it wasn't it. It's not merely a legend then? That means, she asked, what happens once one becomes a dragon? The Grand Priest smiled a bit and replied, you shall know in due time. He said, one can delay his transformation into a dragon through the Holy Maiden's powers. However, one cannot altogether escape the fate of becoming a dragon. Crown Prince Lanfear began roaming the battlefields and causing bloodshed when he was only 16 years old. Though I doubt he wasn't aware that the more one uses the dragon's powers, the closer he becomes to turning into one. He said, regardless, no one will suspect a thing as long as you keep your act up until his transformation. Elena asked, but, in that case I shouldn't. Meanwhile, the Grand Priest interrupts her saying, I see you still have yet to grasp the gravity of the situation. With your sister gone, we have but two choices to make. If we exclude the choice of sending you to the palace in Leyla's place, our only other choice is to tell the Emperor the truth that the Holy Maiden has gone missing. Do you think that the Emperor will sit idly by upon hearing that? He said he'd turn the temple upside down, if it's to find the Holy Maiden. And if his men find out about you during their search, we'd have no choice but to confess that the Holy Maiden has a twin sister and that we'd kept quiet about it all this time. As the Archbishop, I'd rather be rid of you. Then have the entire temple sent to the gallows for betraying the Emperor's trust. He said to her, so answer me, Elena Underwood. She clenched her hands and Grand Priest asked her, marriage or death, which will you choose? After some time, Elena was wearing the bridal dress and two servants were helping her getting ready. A servant helps her doing making. Elena thinks it's as the Archbishop said. Not a single person suspects me, or rather not a single person is interested in me. She thinks, honestly, I can't help but find this strange. The dragon's descendant is part of the imperial lineage. The Crown Prince's safety could be on the line, so why aren't they truly inquiring into me? It's as if they have no interest in what happens to him. She raised from her seat thinking, but I suppose there's no use worrying about that. She thinks, though I may be able to fool the others, the Crown Prince met Leyla when they were both young. While going towards the wedding place, she thinks, if he finds out I'm not who I claim to be, there will be no way to avoid the Emperor's punishment. She, holding a bouquet of white flowers in her hand, thinks, I don't want to die. Please, if you're watching from somewhere, share your courage with me, as you did back then. She stands at her place and waits for the crown prince while the people in audience said, I can't help but pity this generation's Holy Maiden. To be betrothed to the likes of that crown prince. Someone said, hush! Lower your voice if you don't want to lose your head. A man asked, when's the crown prince arriving anyway? The other man said, the bride's been standing alone by herself for hours. The sun's going to set at this rate. Meanwhile, Elena, tired while standing there for long, and clenched the bouquet, thinking, I mustn't lose my composure. She thinks Leyla wouldn't be bothered by such words. Meanwhile, the emperor, seeing her, said, I see that she's able to stay composed even in a situation like this. He said, I think I now understand why Kyle behaved himself whenever I brought up his fiancé's name. A servant comes and said to him, Forgive me for my impudence, but are you certain the conference will show your majesty? He said, I'm afraid sending Prince Kyle on an expedition on the eve of his marriage may have been a rather unreasonable. The emperor asked him, Aren't you curious? He replied, Your Majesty? The emperor said, He's always obliged to whatever command at the mansion of his fiancée. He said with a small smile on his face, I want to check with my own eyes the degree of his earnestness. He thinks, prove to me, Kyle Lanfair. Show me how far you're willing to go to get what you desire. For that shall decide the direction of my next move. Meanwhile, the door opens and everyone gets confused. Elena turns and sees towards door and gets confused. Seeing Kyle in armor, someone said, A man in black armor. Kyle removed his helmet and steps forwards. While seeing him, the audience said, No, this is simply impossible. You mean to say that man is the crown prince? While he was moving towards the stage, people said, Hush! Don't you see he carries the sword that was bestowed upon him by the emperor himself? You'll lose your head if you keep talking. The crown prince wouldn't walk into his own wedding ceremony looking like that. Seeing him, the emperor starts laughing, Ha ha ha. Elena thinks, and yet the emperor is laughing, and no one is stopping the man's path. Which must mean that he is Crown Prince Kyle Lanfair, the man who's to become my husband. Kyle throws his helmet and asked her for an apology. I apologize for the wait. Kyle stands in front of her and said, Let us exchange our vows and get this ceremony over. Why? Meanwhile, he opens his eyes and saw Elena. Seeing her, he suddenly remembered their past. Seeing him glaring at her, she gets confused. She thinks, Why is he looking at me like that? She thinks, it's as if he's just seen a ghost. Kyle raised his hand. He removes armor from her arm. He steps forward. He gets close to Elena and said, Your hand, please. Elena gets confused. She moves her hand to Kyle's hand. Kyle, holding her hand, said, I, Kyle Lanfair, solemnly vow. He placed the ring in her finger and said, To take thee, Leyla Underwood, to be my wedded wife. With a cold look he continues, Till death do us part. Meanwhile, after some time, Kyle was sitting beside a window, lost in his thoughts. He thinks, Why was she the one at the altar? Meanwhile, he turns and saw his blade. He raised and moved towards it. He picks it and draw it out. The blade was this sharp and clear that he saw his face on it. Meanwhile, someone knocks at the door and Kyle asked, Who is it? A servant standing next to Elena outside of his room said, Your wife, the crown princess, wishes to see you, your highness. The door opens and she steps in. Kyle and Elena both look each other standing in front of each other. Meanwhile, Lau clenched his hand and suddenly grabs her, saying, Come in. The servant goes back and the door gets closed. Elena was confused standing at the door seeing Kyle. Kyle with a cold look asked, Are you going to just keep standing there? Hearing this, Elena gets confused. She clenched her hand and thinks, He might find it suspicious if I don't say anything. She inhales and thinks, I must act like how Leyla would. She wouldn't lose her composure even in a situation like this. She said, I still have yet to hear your intentions with me. She said, If you intend to claim me, I shall be yours. However, if you do not, I shall leave." Meanwhile, she shivered and Kyle noticed her. Kyle said, "Though you tremble as you speak. However, I don't understand what you mean to say." Saying this, Kyle turns back. He said, "I heard from the bishops that you were blindfolded whenever you rode in a carriage. Is that true?" Elena replied, "Yes." Kyle said, "In that case, you mustn't have had the opportunity to see this properly." Hearing this, Elena gets surprised. She asked him, "Is that the tree of life, a grand tree that stands in the center of the empire? It derives its name from the fact that it was the first ever plant to set root in this world." She comes to window and seeing the tree thinks, "I heard that the tree only bears leaves when a descendant of dragon is born. This is my first time seeing it in person." She gets happy seeing it and said with a smile on her face, "It seems that the flowers might bloom anytime soon." Seeing her smiling, Kyle also gets happy and make a small smile. He grabs her saying, "Indeed. As you say, the flowers shall soon bloom," he said in her ear, "and by then it'll be too late." He said, "You haven't forgotten your duty, have you?" Hearing this, she gets shocked and confused. Elena said, "My duty is to delay your transformation into—" Meanwhile, Kyle interrupts her saying, "Wrong." He said, "Once the flowers of the tree of life come into full bloom, the descendant of the dragon transforms irrevocably into a dragon. In other words, I'll lose my life as a human and turn into a complete monster. I trust you have not forgotten the promise you made to me 8 years ago, Leyla." Saying this, he gives her his blade. He squeezed her hand and said, "You swore that you'd free me before I turned into a dragon." Hearing this, Elena gets completely shocked and confused. Kyle, with a smile on his face, said to her, "So kill me as you promised." He, pointing his finger to his chest, said to her, "Here?" He said, "Stab me here with all your might." Hearing this, Elena lost his mind for a second and gets shocked. She thinks, "Did I hear that right? He wants me to stab him. Is he seriously telling me to kill someone I met for the first time today?" She starts trembling and thinks, "What do I do? Should I just tell him the truth? I'm not Leyla, the one who made that promise to you." She drops the blade and shouts in her mind, "Isn't me!" Kyle gets disappointed and Elena said, "I will not." Kyle raised and asked her, "You won't, you say?" He said, "Then there's no reason for you to be here." He gets close to her and said, "If you don't intend to keep your promise." He, giving a cold look, said, "Leave this palace at once." She thinks, hearing this, "Leave the palace? That means I'll have to return too." She recalled Grand Priest's words, "Do not forget this, Elena. All that will be awaiting you upon your return is death." She thinks, "I can't go back." Seeing Kyle, she thinks, "However, my only other choice is to kill this man." Kyle asked her, "Why are you hesitating?" He gets close to her and said, "If you don't kill me here and now, you'll be the one who has to face me when I become a dragon." Elena starts sweating and asked, "How so?" Kyle clenched his hand and said, "The dragon's descendant possesses a body that is near immortal. Neither the slash of a sword nor the flames of fire can kill him, for his body will simply regenerate. The only individual who can kill such a man is the Holy Maiden." Hearing this, she thinks, "I can't believe it. Is this what the Archbishop meant when he told me that I'd know everything in due time?" Kyle grabs her saying, "If you won't grant me my wish of dying while human, I ask that you at least grant me this other request." He said in a low tone, "Please do not stay by my side." Elena clenched his cloths and asked, "And what if I refuse?" Elena shouts, "Are you telling me to run away and save my own skin?" She said, "If I do so, everyone will either get killed or hurt, and who knows what the angry populace would do to you." Kyle said, "It's preposterous that you're still worrying about the lives of others despite your own predicament." Suddenly, Kyle lifts her on his shoulder. She gets confused and shouts, "What are you? Let me down at once." Kyle said, "If you won't leave on your own, then I shall simply have to make you." Kyle takes her somewhere and she asked, "Where are you taking me?" Your Highness, please. He went downstairs and she shouts, Please wait. Kyle said to her, There's no need to worry. While still holding her on his shoulder, he said, You should be able to avoid the worst once you're out of Landfair. She asked him, Do you intend to drive me out of this land? He takes her in his arms and ached, Isn't it obvious why they sent you here? All they care about is achieving their end. Your safety is of no importance to them. He said, There is not a single soul in this land who will thank you for your sacrifice. Hearing his words, Elena thinks he's right. However, if I leave, what will become of the man who saved my life? They come outside where a man was waiting for them with a horse. Kyle said, Go with that man over there. And the man bowed. Elena asked him, But what of you, Your Highness? She asked him, As you say, the bishops may be the ones to bear the consequences if I leave, but she thinks, if I return to the temple, I'll surely be dead. I know I'm not in the position to be worrying about someone else right now. But still, she asked him, What will become of you once you turn into a dragon? Kyle said, That is not Empress. She interrupts him saying, It is. She said, You keep worrying about my safety instead of your own. She asked him, Have you never thought to run away? She said, The only fate that awaits you here is death, so why do you try not to run away? She squeezed his shirt saying, Perhaps you'd be better off a dragon than a dead man. Kyle sighed and replied, There is something I fear more than death. He said, You see, I want to die as myself. He grabs her and said, I don't want to lose myself and end up destroying what I hold so dearly. Seeing him, she thinks, I've seen this look before. She recalls a moment she was sitting with him, and he said, I'd like you to become my amigo, then. She asked, Your amigo? He replied, Someone who is like the other half of my soul, a shadow that follows me wherever I go, a reflection I see in the mirror. If I could live my life knowing that you'd always be my side, I feel like I could. Amigo. She said to him, There was someone I knew in the past who taught me this word. They said if they could find someone irreplaceable to them, they might be able to believe that there's an end to all troubles. I do not dare suggest that I could become that person to you. However, I'd like you to allow me to stay by your side in a similar fashion. Meanwhile, she thinks, I'm not Leyla. She squeezed her cloth thinking, but he seems to truly believe I am. And there's one thing I can tell from the look on his face and his actions tonight. The person he cherishes above everyone else, his amigo, is none other than Leyla, whom I am a mirror reflection of. She said, You waited a long 8 years for me? I do not wish to leave you behind here so that I can run off by myself. She said, You are the only person who has worried for my safety as the Holy Maiden, so I too would like to help you. She touches his hand saying, If I were able to find a way to prevent your transformation, would you be willing to live life anew? Hearing this, he clenched his hand and asked, Live life anew? He asked her, Do you truly believe that is possible? Countless scholars, physicians, and bishops have endeavored to cure the dragon's descendants, yet not one has been able to avoid his fate. There is not a single exception to this. He said, Fate isn't something that can be changed. She flinched and said, I do not think likewise. She thinks, if what the Archbishop told you is true, Leyla and I are the first holy maidens to have been born as twins. His words that there has been no exception give me assurance. If there truly is a path called fate, then that path has already taken a new direction. My very existence is proof of that. She said to him, I'll find a way to turn you completely into a human. Elena said, Before the flowers of Tree of Life bloom. So please give me a chance to prove you wrong. Hearing her words, he clenched his hand. He slammed his hand on the wall in frustration. He said to her in anger, What do I hate to say to make you understand? He shouts, You're merely endangering your own life by staying by my side. She exhales and asked him, If I leave, what will happen once you turn into a dragon? What will become of the people of Landfair? She shouts, "Just as you have something you don't want to lose, I have someone dear to me whom I don't want to lose as well." She said, "There's no point in me surviving alone." Kyle gets shocked hearing that she had someone dear to her and asked her, "Someone dear to you, you say?" He asked her, "Are you implying that this person's life is as important as your own?" She said, "I doubt there's much difference in the value you and I place on that which we deem important." Hearing this, Kyle replied, "I see." He turns and said, "If nothing I say will convince you, you're free to do as you please." He said, "However, keep in mind that this will be your only chance." He said, "Shall you fail to fulfill your promise before the first flower of the tree blooms, I'll have you expelled from Landfair." Elena replied, "Understood." He suddenly comes close to her and said, "Also do not forget that you're my wife until then." Elena said, "What might you mean by that, your highness?" Kyle said, "I shan't ask who it is you cherish so dearly. However, I hope you won't make mention of that person again before me." Hearing this, she gets confused and thinks, "Did I say something that bothered him?" She faltered and said, "I shall also bear that in mind." Suddenly she starts feeling dizziness and thinks, "What's happening to me?" She lost her sense thinking, "Is it because my nerves have worn off? I feel." Meanwhile she staggers and seeing her, Kyle gets shocked. He grabs her in his arms. Kyle holding her thinks, there's no need to be alarmed. She's merely fallen asleep. He takes her in his arms and takes her inside. He puts her on bed. He touches her hairs while she was sleeping. He said, "It's as if I'm in a terrible nightmare. Why were you the one sent here instead of her? I never imagined our reunion would take place this way." He said her name, Elena. And we found that he already knew her. Some servants asked to their head servant, "Do you really intend to wake up His Highness, ma'am?" A servant said, "Some have even gotten hurt while trying to wake him up." The other one said, "I'm sure you know that better than anyone else, ma'am." The head servant said, "We've no choice. It's already been half an hour since His Majesty's order to check upon His Highness." The head servant shouts her name, "Julie." She replied, "Yes, ma'am." She steps forward to the door and starts knocking. She said, "Excuse me, Your Highness, but I bring you word from His Majesty." Suddenly Kyle replied, "Come in." Hearing this, she gets shocked. She opens the door and saw him in bed with Elena, and she said, "Your Highness, His Majesty requests that you meet him in an hour." Kyle asked him, "And where does my father want to see me?" Hearing this, servant gets nervous and replied, "I in his office, Your Highness." Kyle raised from bed and touching Elena's hair said, "I shall head there now." He said, "When she wakes up, make sure to inform her so she isn't confused." Seeing him, the servants gets confused. Meanwhile, a servant among them remembers something and turns back. She headed towards Kyle's brother's room and tell him about Kyle and Elena. He asked her, "You mean to say that my brother is head over heels with the crown princess?" She replied, "Why yes, it appears so, Your Highness." Writing something on a paper, he said, He draws a line on paper, messing the whole written paper, and said, "Now that's unexpected." He said, "How very unlike him." Meanwhile, Kyle wearing black and white dress walking through a hallway. He thinks, "My decision last night was too rash. I ended up allowing Elena to stay in the palace." But he recalls last night when Elena said, "There was someone I knew in the past who taught me this word." He thinks, "I wasn't able to think clearly from the moment I found out she hadn't forgotten about me." He thinks, the fact that she recalls that memory but is unable to recognize me must be because of how much I've changed since then. Regardless, I allowed the excitement of finding out that she still remembers me to distract. He thinks, no, was that the only reason? Elena said, "There's no point in me surviving alone." He thinks, perhaps what I really wanted was to separate Elena from whoever her special someone might be. Kyle sighed and covered his face with his hand. Her brother comes and said to him, "What an unusual sight." He said, "It's not every day I find you sighing like that." Seeing him, Kyle asked Shane, What business do you have with? Shane steps close to him and said, a bit cold, don't you think? He said, we may have been born to different mothers, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm your one and only brother. Kyle turns saying, I'm afraid I don't have the time to humor you. If you have no business. Meanwhile, Shane interrupts him saying, how's Leyla? Hearing this, he gets shocked. Shane asked, I suppose it's discourteous for me to address her in that manner. Shane bowed and said, forgive my discourtesy, dear brother. He said, ever since the wedding ceremony, all that's been on my mind is how I thought I'd never see that woman again. Meanwhile, hearing this, Kyle grabs him from his shirt. Shane said, why are you so upset? This isn't like you at all. Kyle replied, whatever you may think, it is indisputable that she is now my wife. He said in a cold tone, so do not take an interest in her in whatever manner or form. Shane said, Kyle, do you really think you have the right to say that to me? Kyle leaves his shirt saying, even if you think I don't. He turns and said, should you choose to ignore my warning? Kyle said, I promise there will be grave consequences. Hearing this, Shane sighed. Shane thinks the maid was right. He is acting completely out of character. Shane said, looks like I'd best meet that woman a little earlier. The servants said to Elena, Your Highness, we shall be attending to your needs from now on. She said, shall there be any inadequacies, please feel at ease to point them out to me. Elena thinks, stay calm. It was a given that some might not think well of the Holy Maiden. I must avoid attracting any unwanted suspicion from them. Meanwhile, she noticed a servant sobbing. Seeing a servant crying, she thinks, is someone crying? Elena thinks, I was worried whether I was going to be able to keep up my act as the crown princess, but it seems they're too scared to even begin suspecting me. The head servant said, do not forget whose wife it is you'll be serving from now on. She said, should you incur his anger, you won't live to see another day. The crying servant said, I apologize. Hearing this, Elena squeezed his arm thinking, I see. She thinks, the one they fear isn't me. It's the crown prince. I can't have someone who fears him serving by my side. Though I'd borrowed Leyla's name, I was the one who promised to find a way to prevent his transformation. If I'm to keep my word, I'm going to need a helping hand. Someone who deeply fears the crown prince will only get in the way. I should only keep those who don't fear him or are strong enough to overcome their fear of him. Elena said, I know full well that Val come from esteemed households. Elena asked the servant, how old might you be? She hesitantly replied, at 15, Your Highness. Elena said, how admirable. Though you're still so young, you've come all the way here for your household sake. The head servant said, forgive me, Your Highness, but Elena waves her hand in air and said, I understand what it is you're trying to say. She said, however, it cannot be denied that most of them have not gathered here of their own accord but for their household sake. She said, besides, my being the crown princess does not change the fact that I am the Almighty One's chosen. Therefore, I do not wish to see them make such an unnecessary sacrifice for my sake. She said, I won't hold any of your households responsible. Elena said, if the thought of remaining here frightens you, please feel free to return to where you might find peace. Elena and a servant named Julie were standing in a room in front of each other. Elena asked her, what might your name be? She replied, it is Julie, Your Highness. Julie Wes. Elena steps towards her saying, are you sure about not following the others? She said, if you don't dare to step away for your household sake. Julie replied, Your Highness. She said, you may not believe me, but I am here of my own accord. You see, I have a promise. 9 years ago, my one and only childhood friend began working for the palace for his family's sake. The duty given to him was to stand at the side of the most dangerous man in the empire and protect him. Upon learning this, many tried to dissuade him, but his resolve never wavered. Therefore, I swore to myself that if the man he protects finds himself a wife, that I'd serve by her side. Elena asked, is the man whom your friend protects perhaps? Meanwhile Sir Phillips comes and said, I have come here by order of His Highness Crown Prince Kyle. He bowed and said to Elena, It is an honor to meet you, Your Highness. I am Philip Baldwin, Sir Kyle's personal guard. Seeing him, Elena thinks, he's the man the Crown Prince entrusted to escort me last night. Elena, seeing Julie, thinks, oh, I see. The way she looks at the man before her, it's as though he's her everything. She reminds me of the way he used to look at me, the boy from my childhood. Meanwhile Sir Philip said, Your Highness? She gets shocked and comes back from her thoughts. Sir Philip said, Sir Kyle has appointed me to henceforth be your personal guard. He said, please feel free to rely on me anytime His Highness is unable to physically be by your side. Sir Kyle has instructed me to prioritize your safety above all else. Hearing this, Elena thinks, to think that he's provided me with his closest retainer. She squeezed her hands thinking, no, I mustn't fool myself. The Crown Prince has obviously done this for Leyla's sake, not mine. She clenched her hand and thinking that he might be doing this for me may very well pull me into an emotional swamp I cannot escape from. Elena closed her eyes thinking, I mustn't forget my promise to the Crown Prince. I have to focus on what must be done. Philip has been serving as the Crown Prince's personal guard for 9 long years. As for Julie, she chose to work here due to her trust and faith in Philip. These two are clearly here of their own conviction. I think I can trust them. Elena said to both of them, Sir Philip, Julie. Prince Kyle and I shall be in your care from now on. Julie said, we shall serve you dutifully, Your Highness. Elena said, well then, there's something I'd like to ask of you two right away. Hearing this, they gets confused. Elena said, I'd like to go to a place where I might find plenty of records of the palace's history. Could you escort me there? Julie and Sir Philip glanced at each other without any word, and Elena asked them, is there a problem, perhaps? Sir Philip replied, I wouldn't necessarily call it a problem. It's just a certain unwelcome guest happens to frequent that place. While walking to their way, Sir Philip walks behind Elena. Elena feels awkward and stops. She said to Sir Philip, Sir Philip? She turns and said, would it be against etiquette if you were to walk by my side? He replied, yes, Your Highness. However, Sir Kyle did instruct me to follow your command. Do you perhaps find my walking behind you uncomfortable? Elena replied, oh, it's not that it bothers me. It's just that there's something I'd like to ask. Sir Philip said, please ask away. I shall answer you to the best of my ability. Elena said, I simply found it curious that, unlike the others, you called the Crown Prince Sir Kyle. Sir Philip replied, oh, I see. So that's what you were wondering about. He said, I have been serving Sir Kyle ever since he was 15 years old. Soon, it will be my 9th year of service. He said, having siblings who are much younger than me, I remember being surprised upon meeting Sir Kyle for the first time. He wasn't all that different from my siblings, you see. He said, I realized very soon, however, just how wrong I was regarding this. Elena asked him, was he different from other children his age? Sir Philip asked, are you aware that Sir Kyle was summoned by the Emperor this morning? Elena replied, yes. The chief maid told me as soon as I arose. Sir Philip said, I'm not sure if you know this, Your Highness, but Sir Kyle engages in major battles without fail, including wars with smaller nations and campaigns against monsters. He said this has been the case ever since he became 17 years old. Descendants of the dragon born with black blood are raised from birth with the expectation that they'll become great warriors. So the reason he appeared at the wedding ceremony covered in blood is... Hearing all this, she squeezed her cloths. She said, understand that he is a descendant of the dragon. However, isn't it cruel that he has had to participate in combat like that ever since he was 17 years old? Meanwhile, she thinks, having been chosen by the Mighty One, Leyla was similarly made to meet others' expectations from a young age. And because of that, she was always miserable. Seeing her lost in thoughts, Sir Philip gets confused. He said, "It gladdens me that you are worried for His Highness." Elena said, "Well, it's the obvious thing to do as his wife." Sir Philip replied, "Haha. Hearing you say that, I think I now understand why he gave me all those orders." He said, "This is the first time Sir Kyle has instructed me to watch over someone to such an extent." Elena asked him, "Is that so?" Standing beside a large red door, he said, "Yes, which is why I feel the need to mention this to you. Before you open those doors," he said, "currently in Lanfair, there are 2 candidates who are widely seen as a potential successor to the throne. As you know, between these 2, Sir Kyle, the Emperor's firstborn, was the one who was conferred the title of Crown Prince." Elena asked him, "Doesn't the fact that he was conferred the title by itself make him next in line to the throne?" Sir Philip replied, "That is true as far as the public is concerned." He said, however, the Emperor found himself a second wife after the previous Empress passed away. Prince Shane, the Emperor's second son and Sire Kyle's half-brother, was born from this marriage. Most nobles, aware that the dragon's descendant is fated to a short life, yearn for a ruler capable of a long-lasting reign over a fleeting one. Elena said, "In other words, they believe Prince Shane will ultimately claim the throne as he'll outlive his brother." Sir Philip replied, "It's as you say." He said, "As of now, Prince Shane has never brought this matter up himself or shown any indication of wanting the throne for himself. However, they do say it's the wolf in sheep's clothing one must watch out for." He said, "The palace library is where Prince Shane spends most of his free time." He said, "As much as I would like to stay by your side." Elena said, "Only the imperial family and their spouses may enter the library." Sir Philip whispers, "If you happen upon Prince Shane inside, you need not answer every one of his questions. You may even leave if you feel the need to. Moreover, should you find yourself in danger, please call out my name. Right now, your safety is more important to me than any imperial decree, Your Highness." Elena enters thinking, "I didn't intend to stay here for too long because of Philip's warning. Holding a book," she thinks, "but I can't seem to find what I'm looking for." Seeing a book, she thinks, "That book might contain the kind of information I'm searching for." She tries to get the book from up there. Meanwhile, a voice comes, oracles and curses. Hearing this, she gets shocked. A hand reached to the book before Elena's hand. Shane takes the book and asked her, "Why might you be interested in such a book?" Giving the book to Elena, he said, "I am Prince Shane. It is my pleasure to meet you, Crown Princess Leyla." Seeing him, Elena thinks, "So this is Prince Shane." She thinks, "I should keep any talking to a minimum as Philip advised me." She takes the book saying, "Thank you, Your Highness." Meanwhile, Shane grabs her hand saying, "It's been a long while." Kissing her hand, he said, "Since we last spoke face to face like this." He inquires, "Hasn't it? Leyla?" Hearing this, Elena gets shocked and thinks, "Is he acquainted with Leyla?" Elena gets confused and thinks, "How should I answer his question?" She thinks, whenever she returned from the palace, Leyla would always tell me about the Crown Prince. However, she never once mentioned meeting Prince Shane. It's possible that she just never told me about it. But he might be trying to test me. She would draw her hand from him saying, "Is that so?" She said, "I'm afraid I do not remember my childhood very well." She said, "Please allow me to apologize for failing to recognize you, Your Highness." Hearing this, he gets confused. Suddenly he starts laughing, "Haha. Haha." Elena gets confused. He said, "I believe it is I who should be asking for your forgiveness. I'm afraid that was just a joke, Your Highness." Hearing this, she gets shocked and thinks, "A joke?" Shane said, "The only time we've met, really, was when I secretly caught glimpses of you when you visited my brother in the past." Shane said, "I was curious how you'd respond and if you'd perhaps seen me before as well." He said, "Unfortunately, it seems I had my hopes set a little too high." Elena gets confused by his talk. He turns and said, "If you intend to remain in the library, would you like me to show you around?" Elena replied, "Oh, yes, if you don't mind." After some time the rain starts. Shane, noticing the rain, said, "I thought today would be a sunny day, but looks like it's begun to rain." Elena thinks, will the crown prince be alright? Philip did say subjugating monsters in nearby territories was something Prince Kyle did often, but still. Holding a book, Shane asked, "Are these really the books you were looking for?" He said, "All these books seem to be about the dragon's descendant and the Holy Maiden." "Do you really have any need for the information in these books? Being the Holy Maiden, I'm sure you know better than what these can tell you." Elena said, "Although the temple educated me on various matters, such as the etiquette of the imperial palace, I'm afraid what I know about the dragon's descendant and the Holy Maiden was learned through the legends that most are familiar with." She thinks, thinking back, the bishops kept an eye on us, so we wouldn't have a way of finding out about ourselves. She asked him, "What about you, Your Highness? Do you know much about the dragon's descendant?" Shane laughed and replied, "Haha. One would think so, wouldn't they?" He raised from her chair saying, "However, just like you, what I know regarding this matter is no different from what others know." He comes close to her and leaned towards her saying, "Though I do not know much about the dragon's descendant, I know my brother very well. More than anyone else, in fact." Shane said, "I've been curious from the very beginning whether it was about yourself or my brother you were trying to learn more about." He said, "But I think I have my answer now." He said, "I heard that the Holy Maiden is raised without knowledge of the outside world until she comes of age." Shane, tossing her hand, said, "You are alone in this palace, so I can't imagine how suffocating and lonely it must be for you." Meanwhile, Elena thinks, "Why is he touching my hand? He's making me uncomfortable." Shane said, "It's all right. I'm fully aware what kind of person my brother is." Elena thinks, "I can't deny that my initial encounter with the Crown Prince was full of surprises. However, all that I've seen of him since is him worrying for my safety. And yet this man seems to think that it's a given that I'd want to avoid Prince Kyle." Shane asked her, "Could I see your hand for a moment?" He gives her a sachet and said, "Please accept this small gift from me. Give this sachet to my brother, and I'm sure he'll be more than glad to receive it." Elena thinks, "A gift? I'm not sure what he's planning, but I should be wary as Philip warned me." Elena said, "I appreciate the gesture, but I'm afraid I can't." Meanwhile, Sir Philip knocks the door and shouts, "Your Highness." Shane asked, "What is it?" Sir Philip replied, "His Majesty says there is a matter wants to discuss with you regarding Crown Prince Kyle's return." Hearing this, she gets shocked and asked, "Has the Crown Prince returned safely?" Shane said, "As always, he was probably covered in blood upon his return. Am I right?" She gets shocked and replied, "Why, yes." She said to him, "I must go to him." Shane said, "It was a short time, but I was glad to spend it with you. Please take care." Elena rushed towards the door. Shane comes to the door and Sir Philip said to him, "I believe Her Highness misunderstood what you said, Your Highness." He asked, "What do you mean?" Sir Philip replied, "Well, the blood that the Crown Prince is always covered in is of the monsters he slays." Shane laughed and said, "Indeed." He said, "It was simply a harmless joke. I do hope Kyle will like my gift." Meanwhile, Elena asked Sir Philip, "I cannot see him right now." "But why?" He replied, "It is for your own safety, Your Highness." Julie said, "Indeed? I'm afraid it's not advisable to see Prince Kyle at the moment, Your Highness." Elena said, "He supposedly reported to the Emperor while covered in blood. Yet you are telling me that neither a doctor nor even I can enter his room?" Julie said, "We were ordered by Sir Kyle to refrain from saying anything regarding this matter to you. We ask for your forgiveness, Your Highness." Elena said, "Even so, I must." Suddenly some voices starts coming from Kyle's room. They all gets confused hearing this. Elena dashed towards the door quickly. She opens the door shouting, "Your Highness!" She enters the room and closed the door. She locked the door and Sir Philip shouts, "Please open the door, Your Highness! Your Highness!" Elena sighed and said, "Forgive me, Philip." Elena turns and asked Kyle, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Seeing him, she asked, "Your Highness." Suddenly she gets shocked seeing him. He was covered with blood and his room's floor was also messed with blood. His eye turns as a monster's eye. Seeing him like this, she starts thinking, is that Crown Prince Kyle? He comes close to her and she thinks, something feels strange about him. Seeing his eyes, she thinks, his pupils are slit vertically, like those of a beast. She thinks, is this what it's like for the dragon's descendant to slowly turn into a dragon? She thumped her hands and thinks, if that's the case, then it's even more reason for me to do something about it. Elena said, "It's me, Your Highness." She asked, "Can you recognize?" Kyle's vision was blurry and she said, "It's me, Leyla. The one who promised to turn you back into a human." Kyle replied, "Leyla? No, you are." Kyle thud down and Elena shouts, "Your Highness." She said, "Are you all right? Please allow me to call the physician immediately." Kyle asked her, "Why? Didn't you listen to Philip?" He said, "I'm sure I instructed him to stop you from entering the room." She said, "I heard you had returned covered in blood." Kyle said, "Didn't I tell you that I'm nearly immortal? Besides, this blood isn't mine." She said, "Even so, I can't help but worry about you." Kyle thinks, how strange. Usually, the pain from using the dragon's power persists well into the night. However, with Elena by my side, it feels as if the pain is fading away. He thinks, though it is probably just my imagination. He said, "You'd only be endangering yourself by staying here. Leave this room and listen to what Philip tells you." Elena thinks, the reason he prioritizes me over himself like this must be because of how much he loves Leyla. She thinks, I wonder why Leyla left behind a man like him just to run away. If I were in her position, I'm sure I would have taken a different path. Elena said, "I couldn't possibly leave you knowing your current state." She touches her face and he said, "You really don't listen, do you?" Elena replied, "I'm always listening. You are constantly on my mind, Kyle." Kyle thinks, the way she sees others, the way she wants to hasn't changed since the last time we met when we were young. And neither have I in wanting to find solace in her innocence. Suddenly Kyle smells scent from her body and gets shocked. She gets confused and asked, "Your Highness?" He lost in his thoughts, this familiar scent. It's the scent of her perfume. But how? Meanwhile in his thoughts, someone grabs him from her hairs. She said, "Where have you been, Kyle? I warned you not to wander around without my permission, didn't I?" "No. It can't be." A scary redhead ghost appears and said, "My, what a naughty child you are. Look at your mother when she's speaking to you." Lost in his thoughts, the ghost said to him, "I'm the only person who will ever love you now." Meanwhile, coming back to his sense, he said, "Stop." He slams her into the door and shouts, "Enough." Meanwhile, the sachet Shane gives to her felt on the ground. Elena thinks, I can't move at all. What do I do now? She thinks, his eyes are red again, so why hasn't he come back to his senses? He said, "You are mistaken, Deborah." He squeezed her shoulder and she thinks, Deborah? Who could that be? Who is Kyle mistaking me for? Kyle said, "Someone gave me her word." He said, "She promised to turn me into a human." He said, "So? Please, no more." Elena thinks, it's someone else that Kyle sees, not me. She thinks, and yet he's seeking my help. The hugged and she thinks, it's me that he's seeking, not Leyla. Elena, holding him in her arms, said, "It's as you say." She said, "I did promise you that." She thinks, may my words reach him. She said, "I'm here with you, Kyle." Kyle drops his face on her shoulder. Suddenly he comes back to his sense and gets confused. He asked her, "Where's Deborah?" Kyle asked her, "And why do I smell her perfume on you?" Hearing this, she thinks, perfume? Could it be from the sachet Prince Shane gifted me? She ponders and said, "I'll explain everything to you later." she said. For now, please fix your eyes on me. Kyle, seeing her, thinks, Elena. Suddenly he noticed her shoulder. He saw his shoulder hurt. Kyle said to her, I hurt you. Kyle said, as I thought, allowing you to stay by my side was a mistake. Elena said, please, Your Highness. Don't try to distance yourself from me. She said, after all, we are to share the same fate. After some time the door opens and Philip and Julie were still standing outside. Elena comes outside and they shouts, Your Highness. She said, forgive me for my actions earlier. I must have surprised you two a great deal. Philip said, please don't mind us, Your Highness. We are simply glad to see that you are safe. Julie said, truly. Elena said to her, Julie, could you prepare me a bowl of warm water and a soft cloth? Julie replied, of course, Your Highness. Julie went as fast as possible to take what Elena said to her. Elena turns towards Philip and said to him, Sir Philip. She said, did you stop me from entering the room because of Prince Kyle's command to prioritize my safety? She said, if so, you need not follow that command from now on. Sir Philip said, but Your Highness. As His Highness's personal guard, Elena said, it is only right that you prioritize his safety above all else. Elena grabs his hand. She said, please help me so that I might also be able to protect him despite my inadequacies. Sir Philip said, understood. Meanwhile Julie comes and said, I brought the things you asked for, Your Highness. She said, it's heavy, so allow me to carry it into the room for you, Your Highness. Elena said, no, it's all right. It's enough that you brought it here for me. She takes that and said, if possible, I ask that we be left to ourselves tonight. Meanwhile Elena cleaned Kyle, thinking, he was fully covered in blood, yet there's not a single wound on his body. It's like a testament to him being the dragon's descendant. She thinks, I wonder if it's always been this way for him. Has he always had to endure alone without seeking anyone's help just because he is immortal? Kyle said to her, there's no need for you to wash me. He said, I didn't allow you remain in this palace so you can be my maid. Besides, my body will heal on its own, so you need not worry. He said, I ask that you do not put yourself in harm's way again like you did today. Elena thinks, but you were trembling. You may possess immeasurable strength, but that doesn't mean you don't have fears. She clenched her hand and said, Your Highness, there's something I would like to ask you. Who is Deborah? Kyle gets shocked and asked, how do you know that now? He said, it seems I blurted out something unnecessary earlier. Kyle said, Deborah is the mother of my half-brother Shane. She dreamed of becoming the Empress, but she never did. And that broke her. Kyle asked her, are you curious about her? She replied, no, Your Highness. She said, it's you whom I am curious about. She said, I want to know about your past. Your feelings, your thoughts, your likes, your dislikes, everything. Kyle pulls her, saying, very well. Ask, and I shall tell you all that you want to know about me. He said, in return, I ask that you tell me about yourself as well. For instance. He said, I am intrigued as to who taught you the word Imago. She said, if I tell you the story behind that, you'll probably laugh at the silliness of it. She said, you see, although I remember it so vividly, there's no proof that it actually happened at all. Perhaps it will sound like a fairy tale to you. You know, like a story in which a wizard grants you a wish or one where you're able to fly. She said, in any case, I ask that you listen along as if I'm recounting a dream I had. Kyle asked, a dream? She replied, as you know, the temple I grew up in is a place that even the imperial family cannot enter without permission. She said, as such, it was difficult for me to make friends, especially ones who were my own age. However, the person who taught me the word, Imago, was a boy not much older than me. I remember being immediately convinced the moment I saw him. Convinced that that boy was an angel briefly sent to me from above. She said, when I saw the boy for the first time, I thought that I was perhaps dreaming. She said, as a matter of fact, I was even worried he might disappear if I approached him. So imagine my surprise when he spoke to me. In her memory, that boy was Kyle, and he asked her, "Who are you?" She replied, "Nice to meet you. My name is Elena." She starts questioning him, "Where are you from? What's your name? How long will you be staying here?" She asked, "Is there something I can help you with?" Kyle said, "You have a sister who shares your face, don't you?" Hearing this, she gets shocked and paused. She said, "I'm sorry." She said, "I see that you came here to meet Leyla." She said, "Looks like I got a little carried away thinking you'd come to see me." Hearing this, he starts sweating inside. He holds her shoulder and said, "No." He said, "I only asked to make sure I was right. You are the one I came to see." Coming back to her wedding day, Elena was sleeping and Kyle sitting next to her glanced at her. He touches her hairs and said, "You'll never know." He said, "How my heart is stirred by your every word." Coming back to present day, Kyle asked her, "How are you certain that the boy you met that day was actually human?" She replied, "I am not, I'm afraid." She said, "After all, it's possible that I had actually imagined it all in my head in my loneliness." She said, "Regardless, the word imago, which he taught me, is still special to me." Elena said, "I'd never heard of such a word until then. So it might be that I really was visited by an angel." She turns towards him and said, Now that I think about it, it's quite strange." She said, "You seem to bear some resemblance to that boy, Your Highness. It's a shame I didn't think to at least ask him his name." She said, "I'm sure he has probably forgotten about me, but to me, our encounter remains a special memory to this day." He said, "Kyle." She gets confused and asked, "Your Highness?" Kyle stares at her. He thinks, I wonder how Elena would react if I told her that I'm that very same boy. How would she react if I told her that I actually knew her real name? No, I mustn't. The palace is constantly under the watchful eyes of the Emperor. It might prove harmful in the long run if she knows that I'm aware she isn't the real Holy Maiden. For now, I need to continue keeping it a secret for Elena's sake. Kyle said, "You called me by my name while I was delirious, didn't you?" He said, "Yet now you address me formally." Elena said, "I'm afraid I might have done so without thinking in the heat of the moment." Meanwhile, Kyle grabs her hand. He said to her, "Call me by my name. It's more comfortable for me that way." Elena said, "Well then. Sir Kyle?" He said, "You aren't my subordinate now, are you? You're my wife." Elena said, "Kyle." After some time, Elena fell asleep, and Kyle sits next to her. He touches her lip and then his own, thinking, I don't understand. How did Elena end up being betrothed to a monster like me? Leyla, that woman. Just where in the world is she? I have so many questions, but I'm scared I might lose you if I dig too deep. How I wish you were right, Elena, that I was an angel sent to you from above. But then, even if that were the case, I suppose my wish would remain the same. I'd pray that my wings wear out, so that I might live out my life with you as human. He said, How am I to give up on you now? Honestly, don't know anymore. Elena said, What time is it now? Last night I was dash. Kyle said, Why, Your Highness? How are you feeling? She said, I feel perfectly fine. See, I ugh. Kyle said, Did I hurt your shoulders last night? It's best if you see the physician immediately. She said, Why? Are you not asking me to heal myself with my holy powers? Elena thought, The Holy Maiden has the ability to cure injuries with her holy powers, so Leyla has never needed to see a physician before. Could it be that he's on to me? No, that's impossible. Not when he hasn't questioned a single thing about my identity. But if he doesn't know that I'm not Leyla, why would he dash? Kyle said, Because it's my fault. I'm the one who's responsible for hurting you. Even if you cover up your bruises, they won't disappear for quite a while. Kyle said, Tell me, did you seriously think I'd ask you to heal yourself on your own after hurting you? It goes to show how poorly those at the temple must have treated you. There is one thing I want you to understand, he said. You're my wife, whether you're the Holy Maiden or not. And you're the only one who's promised to turn me completely human. No one shall treat you with indifference, not even Myeopsilon. I hope that you will always keep that in mind, he said. What should I do? I know I'm bound to lose you, yet I wish I could tell you the truth and stay by your side. The physician is right. You shouldn't exert yourself for a while. She told me I should be better after a few days of rest, though, Elena said. Besides, I haven't forgotten how you told me there isn't much time remaining. Kyle said. I was told by Philip that you met Shane. Elena said. I visited the library in hopes of finding something useful, though I didn't find anything in the end. That's where I met him. Kyle said. Did he say anything to you? She replied. And no, nothing in particular. However, he did give me a certain sachet as a gift. I suspect that is where the scent of Deborah's perfume came from. Elena said. Kyle? Kyle said. If you can, try not to find yourself alone with Shane. She said. I was informed of the situation by Sir Philip. I was told he's someone who might harm you in pursuit of the throne. That isn't the only reason. You see, Shane holds a grudge against Myeopsilon, because of something that happened that was clearly my fault. If he were to harm you because of that, Elena said, Kyle, I'll be fine. Not only do I have Julie and Sir Philip by my side, but I also have you. You know, if I had known more about you earlier, I would have approached things differently from the start. Which is why there is something I'd like to ask of you. If I'm to find a way to turn you completely into a human, she said, I'll need some time to learn about you. As such, do you think you can spare a part of your day for me? Kyle said, Spare you a part of my day. The more time I spend with Elena, the more difficult it will become to let her go. However, if sending her away now isn't an option, I'd at least like to fulfill her wishes. If that is what you wish, then I'll gladly oblige. She said, Thank you, Kyle. There's been much talk around the palace since the Crown Prince's marriage. Well, that's to be expected. After all, it's the marriage of none other than the Crown Prince himself. I was under the impression that descendants of the dragon were void of human emotions, but I hear he's changed overnight after falling in love. It really is like something out of a fairy tale. Well, I hear there's more to the story. Apparently, an even juicier rumor is circulating among those working in the palace. Another lady asked. And what could that be? One of the ladies asked. They say that the Crown Princess hasn't only bewitched the Crown Prince, but Prince Shane as well. The head of maids asked. My Violet, are you all right? Violet replied. That can't be. Prince Shane is mine, Bishop said. It's been a long time, Your Highness. From the outside, the palace seems no different from usual. Shane said. Wouldn't you agree, Your Highness? It sounds as if you expect something to be going on inside the palace, Your Grace. Bishop said. Well, I suppose all is well if there's been no trouble. By the way, Your Highness, I'm hearing from the nobles that there have been numerous intriguing developments recently. Are you aware what they've been talking about among themselves as they add fuel to the fire? They say that the Crown Prince has changed ever since getting married, leading to speculation about potential shifts in the dynamics of succession. Some even go as far as to say that the power of love might alter the course of an ill-fated destiny. If such conjectures prove correct, which of you would I be wiser to serve for my own sake? Shane said. How interesting, Your Grace, he said. Remind me, wasn't it you and your men who prepared the Holy Maiden for the Crown Prince to marry? That is not to say I do not understand your fears, Your Grace. In the palace, where authority is everything, the Mighty One's blessings are but meaningless. I had assumed I could easily get rid of her. However, there's no need to fret. I promise you that none of the matters that cause you concern will come to pass. You have my trust, Your Highness. If I can't kill her, I must at least get her out of my way. After all, that woman is bound to become an obstacle in my path. Kyle said, I've been called by my father, so I'm afraid I might not be able to spend my time with you today. Elena said, Is that so? That's a shame. Maid said, The Crown Prince has sure been seeking out the Crown Princess's company almost every day as of late, hasn't he? Indeed. Sightings of him around the palace used to be quite the rarity, but not anymore. Elena said, Kyle, I'll pray for your safe return. Kyle said, I must take Philip with me, so, if possible, try not to move around the palace on your own. I too shall pray that you are safe. Maid discussed. I knew that the rumor circulating the palace was just hearsay. Yup. No better proof than seeing the truth with your own eyes. A maid said, A rumor, you say? Julie became shocked and said, Julie. Elena said, Such a rumor's been in circulation, HUH? Julie said, It's unbelievable, really. Elena said, It's unprecedented for the Crown Prince to display such an interest in another person. She thought, and yet people are already talking about a new rumor before that's even been brought up. Not only that, it's such an outlandish claim, too. Someone caught you in a tryst with Prince Shane? Ridiculous. Elena thought. As she says, it is indeed strange. After all, I've only met Prince Shane once. If someone had seen how Prince Shane carried himself before me, they might have misunderstood, but didn't they say the palace library could only be entered by the imperial family and their spouses? So how did such a rumor spread? She thought, but I suppose that's not important for now. Just as I asked, Kyle's been sparing me some time each day. But despite that, I've yet to find even a single clue to solving the problem. What is it that I have to do to be able to help him? I must find someone with a deeper understanding of the dragon's descendant and the Holy Maiden. But for now, I should try to think back to what Leyla told me about Kyle when we were younger. Perhaps I might be able to find a slight clue from our conversations. I always meet the Crown Prince under the roof of a small gazebo in the palace garden. You see, Elena, that boy is as quiet as a corpse, and his eyes are fierce like those of a beast. However, if you see him yourself, I think you just might think different. Elena said, After all, you are Julie. Julie replied, Yes, Your Highness? Elena asked, Do you know where the largest garden in the palace is? One that's overcast with wisteria flowers in the spring. Julie said, You must be looking for the garden in the inner court. Shall I take you there? I can't seem to remember clearly. Elena thought, What did Leyla say after that? If I can remember it, I just might dash. Elena heard the conversation between Shane and Violet. Violet said to him, How could you say such a thing, Talmikron Upsilon? Tell me it's all a misunderstanding. Shane! Elena thought, That's Prince Shane, isn't it? Julie asked, What's going on? Your Highness? Shane said, I understand how you must be feeling, Violet. Violet said, Shane! You must be shocked to have learned that our engagement's been so suddenly annulled. I just don't understand. Just a few weeks ago, you were sending me gifts of flowers and precious gems, weren't you? Shane said, I'm afraid this is my first time hearing about that. I'm quite certain those were sent by my father out of respect for your father, the Count. Or perhaps it was my servants who did so due to custom. Violet said, Shane, please. Our relationship was different from that of the other nobles, wasn't it? She said, The way you looked at me and smiled at me. Were they not proof of your love for me? Can't you at least tell me why we must part? Please. Shane said, Violet, you say that you've felt love toward me all along. However, just a while ago, I was under the impression that I would never fall in love. Violet said, What do you dash? Shane said, But when she appeared at my brother's wedding ceremony, with all eyes on her, a certain thought crossed my mind. he said. That the one they call the Holy Maiden must be my fated one. Violet said. You cannot be serious. Elena thought. She's right. Had Kyle failed to return to his senses, I might have died that day. Shane said. If he really did love me, he wouldn't have allowed for such a thing to happen. Elena thought. Besides, how could he say such a thing while knowing whose wife I am? Violet said. I don't believe it. Are you telling me the reason you're abandoning me is because, she said, you've fallen for your brother's wife? Shane said. Lower your voice, Violet Carter. I'm not sure what kind of delusion you've been under, he said, but the only reason I'm forgiving you for laying your hand upon me, the prince, Shane said, I ask your father, Count Carter. Or do you wish for me to make your crime known and have you punished for it? Violet stammered. Why, your highness? If you don't wish for that, get out of my sight at once. Shane said. Crown Princess Leyla. Were you entertained? Julie said. Your highness, please mind your manners before the Crown Princess. Shane said. I don't think I'm the one who should be minding his manners. Elena said. Please do not threaten my servant like that, Prince Shane. Give me a moment while I speak to his highness. Julie said. But, your highness! Elena said. Julie, bring Philip here immediately. Julie said. Understood. Shane said. Are you sure about this, your highness? Since you volunteered to remain alone with me knowing for whom my heart yearns, can I take it that you reciprocate my feelings? Elena said. Why? Did you lie and say that you're in love with me? Shane said. Lie, you say? You don't think I might have said that in earnest? Elena said. Please don't think that I'm so naive. I know that you tried to use my husband to have me killed. So spare me your ridiculous jokes. Shane said. I see that love to you is something that is always so pure. I can see now how a twisted man like my own brother fell for you. Elena said. Do not speak ill of Kyle. Shane said. You say my feelings are merely a ridiculous joke, which I admit is partially true. However, what if I told you that there is some truth to them? Elena said. What do you dash? He replied. I mean it when I say that I want you for myself. Elena said. You want me? But why? Shane said. Because of a certain secret you hold, of course. Though you're an imposter, you possess the exact same face that Leyla possesses. Elena thought. An imposter? Did he just call me an imposter? How did he find that out? Shane said. Did you really think no one would find out about your little secret? He said. But there is nothing to worry about. All shall be well as long as you rely on me instead of my brother. Elena thought. And oh, I mustn't trust his words. She sighed. Help me. Kyle! Kyle came to that place and said, Remove your hand now, lest you lose that head of yours. Elena said, Kyle. Kyle said, Have you forgotten my warning not to take an interest in my wife? Shane said, You seem to be mistaken, Kyle. I'm afraid I'm not the one currently troubling her. It's you. Aren't I right, Leyla? Kyle said, Ignore him, and come this way. Elena thought, Can I trust Prince Shane to keep my identity a secret if I go with Kyle right now? Will Kyle treat me the same even if he learned the truth? I want to go to him, but... Elena said, I'm sorry, Kyle. It seems that there's been a misunderstanding. Kyle said, You see, the prince and I were merely having a conversation. Shane thought, Why is Kyle so desperate when it comes to her? The only thing she shares with Leyla is her looks. They're completely different people in every other way, so I doubt Kyle hasn't already caught on. Assuming he does know the truth, there must be a reason he's keeping her by his side. Kyle said, Take this as my final warning to you, Shane. There won't be another. Shane said, I'm afraid you'll have to pardon me, Kyle. You see, the Crown Princess has asked me to be her first dance partner at the upcoming banquet. Elena said, What are you dash? Shane said, I am poster. I've come too far now to admit that I'm neither Kyle's fiancé nor the Holy Maiden. At this rate, he will find out about the truth. I can't let that happen. There's no need for you to refute his words. And you needn't fear upsetting him either. Kyle said, whatever one might say regarding you, you shall be the one I trust in no matter what. Elena said, Kyle. Kyle said, I met with father today, Shane, and I am well aware of the upcoming banquet. However, I'm afraid my wife won't be joining you for a dance on that day. She'll be too busy being by my side. Shane said, have you no pity for her, Kyle? She's bound to eventually find out who you really are. How frightening would it be if she had no way to escape even if she wanted to then? That's why I'm offering her a way out. Elena said, I understand more than anyone else that Kyle is the dragon's descendant, Prince Shane. No matter who he might be, Shane thought. There she goes again. She's more eager to stand up for Kyle than for herself. She's like a completely different person from that frightened woman moments ago. It's as if she truly is in love with Kyle Landfair. I wasn't trying to suggest that I have a gripe because my brother is the dragon's descendant. Rather, Shane said, could it be that no one has told you yet? About why so many regard the crown prince with such fear, that is. Elena said, Kyle? Shane said, do you know who was the first person my brother killed? Born as the dragon's descendant, the very first life Kyle claimed. Wasn't that of an enemy soldier or a forest roaming monster, but that of a helpless woman much like yourself. Shane thought. The very first life that Kyle claimed. Was that of a helpless woman? See? Kyle will never be able to escape his past. Many regard my brother as a hero, mesmerized by his title as the dragon's descendant. There are also plenty of those who praise or support Kyle. He thought again. Because they believe murder is inevitable for the greater good. However, whether his blood-soaked hands are those of a hero or murderer, is probably something Kyle himself knows best. Shane said to Elena, I hope you'll give my offer serious consideration, Leyla. Please consider what is best for yourself. Well then, I hope we'll meet again soon. Elena thought. My mind is in disarray. How did Shane find out that I'm an imposter? And who did Kyle claim as his first victim? I find it difficult to believe that Kyle is a murderer. She thought. Would someone who tried to kill himself in order to avoid becoming a dragon really do something like that? I must hear Kyle's side of the story. Kyle, Elena said. I asked Julie to call for Philip. So how did you end up being the one to appear? Kyle said. I wasn't able to stand idly by after learning that you were in danger. Elena said. Was it all right for you to come? Your audience with the Emperor. Kyle replied. You needn't worry about it. That's something for me to take care of. Kyle said. Is that the only thing you wanted to ask? Elena said. Will you answer me if I ask? Kyle replied. I suppose answering you would be the proper thing to do, especially since it could very well have to do with your safety. Kyle said. But to tell you the truth, I do not wish to tell you about my past. I fear that I might lose you if I were to answer you honestly. Elena said. Why? It fills me with joy to hear that you're afraid to lose me. However, seeing you so hesitant to speak the truth, I too find myself fighting with my conscience. Elena said. Kyle, what I fear most right now is that there's something that I still don't know about you. While Prince Shane was telling me about your past, she said, I was worried you might ask me to leave you again. Kyle said. Is that how you felt? Elena said. Indeed, it was. However, silly as this may sound, hearing you say you're afraid to lose me, she said again, made me happy. I don't know how you'll feel about this. But I actually came here to learn more about you, she said again. Though it's Leyla whom you share your memories with. It doesn't change that you still spent your childhood here. For instance, I'm curious how you felt, Elena further said, when you saw your betrothed for the first time here. I want to know everything about you, both past and present, Kyle. Kyle replied. Everything Shane said and everything you want to know. They're ultimately the same thing. I want you to know that I no longer wish for you to leave my side. However, if you wish to leave me, I do not have the right to stop you. Kyle further said. Allow me to tell you why. 8 years ago. Shane, shouting loudly. Kyle. Kyle, thinking. Shane? Kyle. What are you doing here? Your mother will be upset if she finds out. Shane. It's fine. I didn't tell anyone where I am. Shane. Why were you sleeping here? Kyle. I kept tossing and turning last night. But I don't have that strange dream of mine here. Kyle. Is something the matter? Shane. Well, I was just thinking that you're always mentioning that dream, without actually telling me what it is. Kyle, thinking. It is out of the question to tell him of such a horrific dream. A dream in which I become covered in scales from head to toe, transform into a monster, and go on a murderous rampage. Shane. By the way, Kyle, is today a special day? All the maids and servants I saw were looking for you. Kyle. I almost forgot. My fiancé is going to visit the palace today. Shane. Huh? You mean the Holy Maiden? She's coming to the palace today? Kyle. Yes, but seeing as how you didn't know, perhaps I was supposed to keep that a secret. Shane. You shouldn't give up palace secrets so easily like that. Yeesh, what will you do without me, Kyle? Let me come, too, for your sake. Kyle. You might get in trouble if you get caught, though. Shane. Then I'll just hide so I don't get caught. Kyle, thinking. In truth, she's my fiancé in name only. But I suppose he can come along if he wants to see her. Kyle. Very well. You can come along if that's what you want. A maid. Your Grace, your fiancé was raised her entire life under the care of the Archbishop. She knows neither evil nor vice. It's a great honor to have the Holy Maiden's hand in marriage, for she has inherited the Almighty's power. Beware you do not make her flee from you in fear. The maid. Keep in mind the dragon's descendant is a terrifying figure. Act like a human ought to. Will you shatter it? Then I suppose we will spend our first tea time drinking from the kettle. Isn't that so, Your Highness? Kyle, thinking. So that's her. Leyla. A pleasure to meet you, Your Highness. My name is Leyla Underwood. Kyle. Underwood? Leyla. The bishops gave me such a surname because they found me under a tree. Silly, isn't it? If that made any sense, everyone in Landfair would be in Underwood, since they all live under the tree of life. Kyle. I'm aware that you're only here because the bishops made you come. I haven't the slightest intention of marrying you, however. Whether I marry the Holy Maiden or not, my fate as the dragon's descendant will remain the same. Kyle. That's all I have to say to you. Leyla. Well then. Do you expect everything to unfold according to your will? Leyla. That's funny. Kyle Landfair. I can imagine why you would try to reject me. You believe nothing changes even if you marry the Holy Maiden, don't you? Leyla. That thinking is flawed. You do not truly comprehend the Almighty's omnipotence. You have a certain dream every night, don't you? A dream where you lose your human form to your dragon form. And whenever you imagine yourself as a dragon, mercilessly killing innocents. Leyla, you feel afraid. Afraid such a fate may come to pass. Kyle. How do you know that? I've never told anyone about that dream before. Leyla. Well, I also have a certain dream every night. A dream where you turn into a dragon, and then I kill you. Kyle. You dream of killing me every night? Leyla. Only after you've turned into a dragon, to be precise. It's your lucky day. You possess a body that can heal all wounds. Which means you've likely wanted to ask if you can be killed in your human form. All that exists in this world will naturally perish. But what about you? Will you, a demi-human, be able to perish one day? I know the answer to that, you see. However, an important matter such as this should stay between you and I, don't you think? Leyla. I shall take my leave for today, Your Highness. I wish you good health until we meet again. Shane. Kyle. Kyle. Slow down a little. Is it too late to get a new fiancé? She was rather rude and kept saying such strange things. Kyle. I don't like her at all. Nothing she said was untrue. And I have been wondering whether I am truly human, as she surmised. The dream feels far too real. So much so, in fact, that it feels as though it has already come to be. Kyle. Shane. If I were to turn into a dragon one day, would you still consider me your brother? Shane. What a silly question, Prince Kyle. Deborah. Brotherhood between beast and man is simply inconceivable. Shane. Mother. You shouldn't say such. Deborah. It's time for Prince Shane to have his supper. Lead him to the dining room. Maid. Yes, Your Majesty. Deborah. Kyle. Your Highness, on the day of your birth, I was among those present here in the palace. Deborah. On that day, many delegates from prestigious houses gathered, waiting with bated breath for the needle to prick your flesh. When that black blood began to drip from your delicate finger, His Majesty had quite the expression on his face. While that was going on, however, Deborah, there was something everyone with their eyes set on you failed to notice, but not I. You see, your mother, the late Empress, was clearly crying in silence. Familiar though it may be, the practice regarding the dragon's descendant is ultimately a custom exclusive to Landfair. It was inevitable the late Empress, not native to this land, would be so frightened. Deborah. After all, the very child she gave birth to was born with the blood of a beast. It's probably for this reason that the late Empress hanged herself. Kyle. That's enough, Deborah. Deborah. Despite that, I can't help but love you even if all the others fear you. You remind me of His Majesty in his youth, you see. Kyle. I really am. Don't touch me. Deborah. My, how frigid of you, Prince. You truly do take after His Majesty. I didn't imagine that even you'd look at me with those cold eyes. You'll regret this. When my child, Shane, becomes Emperor. And once that happens, Darius will have no choice but to accept me as his wife. A servant. Your Highness. Kyle. Did I not tell you to let me be? I'm afraid I cannot do that, Your Highness. It is my duty to stay by your side and assist you. Kyle. Don't you lie to me. I know you're here to check on me so I don't turn into a monster sooner. That's the only thing my father cares about. He's only interested in how much of the dragon's powers I'll be able to use before I succumb to my curse. It's obvious that I'm the crown prince in name only. That Shane is the one who'll ultimately succeed the throne. So why won't he appoint that woman as his empress? Servant. No matter what you say, the fact is that you're the crown prince. As for Deborah, she'll continue to remain a mistress unless His Majesty has a change of heart. Your Highness, I believe it would be well within your right to claim the throne should the opportunity. Kyle. I do not wish to be emperor. Oh my, are those words befitting a crown prince? Kyle. You. Why are you here? You rejected every invitation from the palace to visit since that day. What changed your mind? Leyla. It's not that I rejected the invitations, Your Highness. Rather, I was truly unable to visit. You see, the bishops wouldn't let me. Well then, Your Highness. Let us get to our secret conversation. Leyla. It seems the mood around the palace has changed since my last visit, Your Highness. Kyle. Philip isn't here, so spare me the formalities. It's not like you at all. Leyla. We've only met once. Yet I see that you've already decided what is and isn't like me, Epsilon. Kyle. No, Leyla. I take it to mean you feel a sense of closeness with me. Kyle thought. It's happening again. Whenever I face Leyla, I can't move as I please, and I don't know why. It's as if my body itself is commanding me as such. Leyla. Do you still have that nightmare, Kyle Landfair? Kyle. Yes. I still do. Why is the question. Do you know something about it, perhaps? Leyla. It is the future. The future that is to come. I suppose you could call it a divine revelation of sorts. Leyla. However, I believe the Almighty keeps showing us the same dream over and over. Because He wants to tell us something. Think about it, Kyle Landfair. You're destined to destroy the world as a dragon one day, while I'm destined to slay you after you've transformed. Given that, there is another way for us to fulfill our destinies. Leyla. Namely, I could kill you before you become a dragon. Kyle. What do you? Then why was I even? Leyla. You feel indignant. I know. Wondering why you were even born to begin with. But do not be mistaken. There is no reason for your suffering. Leyla. There are two paths before you. The first is to die at a relatively young age. The other is to die a monster's death, after killing countless people. You needn't decide here and now. We're betrothed, after all. So we still have plenty of time to decide. Your destiny. It is too much for you to accept. How I pity you. I still forgive you. Seek me out should you have a change of heart. Philip. We ought to go inside, Your Highness. You'll catch your death of cold. Kyle. Philip. I suggest that you find yourself a new liege to serve before it's too late. Philip. A strange suggestion, if I may. I'm afraid I see no reason to do so. Kyle. Even if Shane doesn't take the throne, there is no chance of my becoming emperor. Philip. Your Highness, you shouldn't say such a. Philip. Reveal yourself. Shane? Kyle. Shane. Stop running. Philip. Your Highness. Please wait. He's heading towards the mistress's quarters. Kyle. Shane. Please come out. There's something I want to talk to you about. You're avoiding me because of what Father said, aren't you? I have no intention of becoming emperor. And I plan to tell Father as such, so please. You heard me earlier, Shane, didn't you? I promise you I don't. Deborah. Kyle? Kyle? You came to see me at last. I really do appreciate you taking the initiative. Deborah. You have heard His Majesty's declaration as well, have you not? Kyle thought. That only the woman who bore the crown prince can be named his Empress. It is clear to me now. Darius has no intention of renaming his successor Deborah. Which means Shane is no good. If you become my child, and I get rid of that failure, Deborah, he will have to call me Empress, then, surely. Kyle. Failure? Are you talking about Shane? Shane saw her mother, and said, Mother. Kyle. No. There's no telling what will happen to Shane if Deborah sees him right now. Kyle thought. Oh, Shane. I've been looking for you, dear. Deborah. You're no use to me anymore. Kyle. Deborah. Let go of Shane. Mother. Mother. Open your eyes. Please. Deborah. Kyle. What have you done? You pushed my mother down the stairs. You murderer. You're a damned murderer. Deborah's funeral was a quiet affair. I thought as soon as he saw me, Shane would call me a murderer in front of everyone. As for my fiancé, she promised me that she'd kill me once we were married, as if to console me. Leyla. Kyle, the death of the imperial consort was an unfortunate accident. Kyle. I do understand that in my head. However, Kyle, I can't help but think that Shane isn't wrong about me. His hands are shaking. If I weren't the dragon's descendant. No, if I weren't. Kyle Lanfair. If I had simply not been born at all. Kyle. This incident might not have happened to begin with. Even if I don't kill you as a dragon, staying by my side will still expose you to danger. So you should do as Shane. Leyla. No. I won't die because of you. I promise I won't leave you like that. I mustn't cry. If Kyle's holding back his tears, then so should I. Kyle. I don't understand you at all, Leyla. Kyle was still just a child then. How could you insist death is the best choice he has? You know better than anyone the suffering that comes with being born different. Leyla thought. Kyle told me he held on this long because of your promise to him. That you would kill him. You make him a promise like that, then you vanish. That's the sole reason I'm here now. Leyla, to herself. Leyla. You never intended to keep your promise to Kyle, did you? You're right, Elena. I was never going to stay true to my word. But do you think you're in a position to lecture me? You're lying to Kyle about your true identity, aren't you? I know I'm in no position to think this way. Leyla thought. If I were to reveal that I am not Leyla, wouldn't you feel even more betrayed, Kyle? Had I not married him while assuming Leyla's identity? Had I told him the truth after our marriage? Leyla. Kyle. Is there really nothing that I can do for you? Why was I born Leyla's twin if not? Why did the temple hide the fact that Leyla has a twin sister? And if my identity is a secret, how did Prince Shane discover it? Leyla thought. He has seen Leyla before. It's possible that he simply saw through the discrepancy. Then again, what if he has a secret collaborator within the temple? The last time we met, Prince Shane asked that I dance with him at the banquet. I wonder if there is perhaps a reason I ought to. And would it sadden Kyle if I accept? I need more to go on if I am going to be able to save you. And confess the truth to you. Confess the truth that the one who was by your side, that the one who loved you wasn't Leyla. Leyla. It was Elena Underwood. It's not going exactly to plan, but pieces are falling into place. Shane. What a shame you weren't there to see the look on Kyle's face. But it's fine, I suppose. For something is about to happen that will surely make you smile, Leyla. Edwin Espera. Your visit is a welcome one, brave lion of Espera. Edwin Espera. The pleasure is mine, to have the honor of an audience with Your Majesty Emperor Lanfair. I pray that you'll forgive my father, who was unfortunately unable to make time to visit you. Edwin Espera. I, Edwin Espera, shall fulfill your expectations in his stead. Philip. What an upright Prince Espera has raised for herself. Father's clearly displeased. He intentionally referred to Prince Edwin as a lion to insinuate that he's not as mighty as a dragon. As for Prince Edwin's response, it was his way of saying that Espera will be safe even without the current king, as long as he, the heir to be, is alive. Edwin Espera. Although I see that Lanfair's black dragon isn't here. Edwin Espera. You may meet Kyle at the banquet. Philip. I'm afraid I didn't want to bother him for a small occasion like this. Edwin Espera. Understandable. His time is better spent on more pressing matters. You see, I had the opportunity to cross swords with the prince during a recent monster extermination campaign. Edwin Espera. I simply wish to pick up where we left off, for our sparring was cut short. Philip. Is that so? A match with no victor, 'tis a shame indeed. I assure you he will be at the banquet. You should ask him then for another bout. Edwin Espera. Of course. I shall see you there as well. My regards until then, Your Majesty. And Your Highness. Philip. That explains why this toothless lion is still snarling. He is blinded by his own pride. He did not realize Kyle was holding back. In any case, until the lion is slain, keep a watchful eye on your brother, Shane. Shane. Yes, father. All that father and that blasted prince talked about was Kyle. From start to finish. Shane. As if to remind me the throne may not be mine to claim. O Almighty, if this is all part of your divine plan. Shane thought. I pray that my revenge is also your will. Servant. His Majesty seems to be placing a great deal of importance on this banquet. Kyle. As expected. Espera's heir apparent himself will be attending. Servant. He was adamant that you must maintain your composure during the banquet. It is for this reason he is overlooking your sudden departure during your recent audience with him. Kyle. He must be trying to give the nobility and Espera the impression that I'll inherit the throne. Leyla. But don't the nobility already believe that Prince Shane is next in succession? Does His Majesty perhaps intend to deceive both the nobility and Espera? Servant. Your Highness, should she? Kyle. It's all right, Philip. The fact that she's aware makes things easier. Kyle. My father has 3 pieces he wants to move at this banquet. The nobles of Lanfair, who have divided into factions. The bishops, who are threatening the palace's authority, and the Prince of Espera, who has come as the emissary of a rival nation. Kyle. In continuing the tradition of marrying the dragon's descendant to the Holy Maiden, the temple has long been desiring to increase its authority. Kyle. Normally, it would stand to reason that the bishops would rally behind me, your husband. Kyle. However, there's no telling how long I'll remain on the board. Leyla. For this reason, the temple has chosen to cooperate with the nobles who support Shane. Leyla. As for the nobles, they've nothing to lose. They've always aligned themselves with the one who has the most authority. Leyla. Am I correct in thinking that His Majesty isn't pleased with this cooperation between the nobles and the temple? Kyle. Yes. Increased authority for the temple is bad news for him. Kyle. That the throne requires the Holy Maiden is its weakness. Did His Majesty appoint you, the dragon's descendant and crown prince? Leyla. To signal a potential shift in the dynamics of succession? Kyle. My father hopes all are duped into thinking within me rests potentially the greatest emperor in Landfair history. Kyle. After all, the temple and the nobility will have no choice but to bow down under a more powerful ruler. Leyla thought. This is it. This must be why Prince Shane wanted to have my first dance at the banquet. He's trying to weaken Kyle's position by creating the impression that we might not be on good terms. Leyla thought. Prince Shane is working directly against the Emperor's will, which must mean. Leyla. Excuse me, Kyle. But could we be alone for a moment? Could you step out, Philip? I shall send for you soon. Leyla. That I'd be his first dance partner at the banquet. But I hope you understand my intention is not to betray you. Leyla. Kyle? Kyle. I shall never doubt your loyalty to me. I'm sure you have your reasons. Nevertheless, it grieves me to even imagine it. Kyle. Seeing you worry for my sake, I can't help but feel that this greed of mine is justified. Kyle. I don't want anyone to have the satisfaction of enjoying a second of your time. Leyla. I'm afraid I'm the one who's becoming greedy, Kyle. I don't want you to love anyone else. I want you to love me. Leyla. Kyle. Thank you for placing your trust in me. But might I ask you just one more favor? Kyle. One more favor? Leyla. To tell you the truth, I've only ever danced once in my life. Kyle. Once, you say? It was with that angel I told you about. As embarrassing as it is to say, the angel must have thought I have 2 left feet. Leyla. I just need some practice. So, if you are willing, Kyle. Wait. Permit me the courtesy to ask. Would you do me the honor of this dance? Leyla. Gladly. Chester. Have you heard? You know about that incident. Things only grew more complicated with the Duke's daughter involved. I don't understand how, with so many foreign guests invited, they openly gossip about their country's secrets in detail. Do they really think we're not listening? Edwin. Let them be. Landfair's hubris will ultimately come back to bite her. Chester. A dignified response. I expect no less from my liege. Espera's son, Espera's glory. Edwin. Edwin Espera. That's enough, Chester. There may still be something to gain in this dump. Edwin. We must fish out information on who's to succeed the throne no matter what. Which reminds me, have you heard the rumors circulating in the palace? Edwin. Oh, about the Crown Princess. The Crown Prince isn't known to open up to others. But apparently she's turned him into a completely different person. Chester. Not only that, she may have even stolen Prince Shane's heart. Then the Crown Princess is unfaithful to her husband? With Prince Shane? Edwin. Kyle Landfair, the Empire's current Crown Prince, is the dragon's descendant. Though he is a powerful man, every dragon's descendant so far has had a short life. Edwin. Thus, he is doomed to be used as a pawn. As for Prince Shane, though not much is known about him, the sentiment that he's next in succession is gaining momentum. The only country that stands a chance against Landfair's might, Edwin thought, is Espera, my proud motherland. Unless we want to hand over our country on a silver platter, we must secure any information we can, however trivial it may be. It also behooves us to consider any potential change before it happens. Hence the need to verify the claims of that soothsayer who appeared recently. Edwin. If the dragon's descendant of this generation is truly different, as that soothsayer claims. Chester. I see. So, that's Landfair's crown princess. She has a goddess's beauty, It must be said. Chester. Do you believe it, Your Highness? That the Crown Princess receives the blessings of the deity? Edwin. Well, if that is the truth, it begs another question. Why have none of the Empire's dragons been able to escape an early death? Edwin. In any case, if she truly holds the key to Kyle Landfair's ascension. Duke Landfair. It may be too early to determine who'll sit on that throne. It appears everyone is here. Duke Landfair. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for gathering here to celebrate our glorious empire. Pray with me that Landfair's glory will continue to live on with the Crown Prince and Princess. Shane thought. Elena looks so alike, and yet so different. No matter how many times I see her. Even now, I fail to understand Leyla's final word of advice to me. That if I truly want to become emperor, I must prevent the woman who's to marry Kyle from loving him. What sway could that woman possibly have over imperial affairs? She is weak. Unlike me. Shane thought. I don't expect her to be able to love a man like Kyle. In fact, I expect her to flee him in fear sooner or later. Kyle said. A delight to see you again. Shane said to her. Have you considered my offer? Leyla replied. My first dance shall be yours as you asked, Prince Shane. Shane said. I knew it. She doesn't feel strongly enough about Kyle to risk sacrificing her own safety. He added. Seeing as you've chosen to join hands with me, you must have feared being outed as an imposter. Leyla said. You are mistaken. I only accepted your offer to ask you something. Shane. Are you plotting against the Emperor? Why did they stop dancing? The music is still going. Chester said. But I can't make out anything they're saying. Edwin said. Nor I. But I am entertained, nonetheless. Leyla said. You asked me yourself, didn't you? Whether I believed anyone at the palace knew my identity? I expect someone does know, seeing as how I was purposefully sent here by someone. You're in collusion with the temple, aren't you? But even knowing that, there's something I can't understand. If Kyle is destined to die young like in the legend, you could have waited until his death and claimed the crown. Shane thought. And yet, here you are, conspiring with the ones seeking to limit the imperial family's authority. It must mean you've known all along of a possibility that even Kyle denies. The real chance that Kyle will become emperor. Leyla said. I do not know who will have told you. Shane said. But you must have also learned there is a way to prevent Kyle's transformation. You've got it all figured out, yet that's the only thing you care about? Shane added. You're only concerned with what you can do for Kyle. What makes you so earnest? Is it because you desire the title of Empress? Or is it power you seek? Wealth? Leyla said. It is because I am an imposter, as you call me. Despite that, there is someone I want to be true to. Thank you for the talk, Prince Shane. Leyla said. Let go. Everyone can see you. Kyle said. Elena. Shane said. Do not go back to Kyle. What are you? You are mad. Do you not know of his grave sins? Kyle deserves nothing. He especially doesn't deserve anyone's love. Kyle said. Leyla said. His dragon eyes are back. Kyle said. No. Kyle said. And no. Why? Shane said. Why did she step in the way? What did she stand to gain by saving me? Leyla said. Please, stop trying to hurt Kyle. Shane said. Don't close your eyes. I almost killed Elena with my own blade. Call a physician to my room immediately. Edwin said. The black dragon always carries himself like a monster on the battlefield. I didn't expect him to have a softer side. It could only be the crown princess who's made him this way. If there are to be changes, as the soothsayer said, perhaps it'd be wise to keep an eye on that lady. Let us go before the ruckus grows, Chest said. Yes, Your Highness, Kyle said. Her life is in no danger. Then why won't she wake? Why won't she open her eyes? He added. I believe it could be due to psychological shock. Please afford her the rest she needs until she stabilizes. He thought. Why did I let myself lose control? I wanted to protect Elena. Pulling out my sword was never the answer. Kyle thought. Was I afraid? Knowing that I'm less than deserving of Elena, I must have been afraid she might leave me once she realizes my worthlessness. And this pathetic fear of mine almost led me to kill her. He said. Elena, please wake up. I suffered enough waiting those 8 years to see you again. If I were to lose you forever like this, Oh Almighty, if it is I, the dragon's descendant, you wish to punish, let not my wife born with your blessings perish. If Elena but opens her eyes, I would gladly accept my cursed fate. I would rather become a dragon this very moment than have her die. I beg of you. Elena said. Where am I? What is this giant creature? Kyle? No, this isn't Kyle, but for some reason, it feels as if I've been yearning to meet him for a very long time. Were we to incur the Almighty's wrath and perish, I shall still love you again in another life, Edna. She said. As will I, Shar, for I cannot imagine a life without you. Edna, if you truly think that way, why did you betray me, my amigo? Elena thought. Was it a dream? When did I fall asleep? She said. Kyle?